there's a lot of new stuff with TimberScan, and some of you have been using TimberScan for a while, may be aware of it or may not be aware of it. What we've done now is that we've incorporated, initially when we built TimberScan, it was primarily an AP approval system, and as time required, we had an add-on module that we sold, which was AIM, which was a document management, content management solution. And what we decided is that all clients should have AIM. So rather than selling it as a separate module, what we wanted to create is we wanted to create a program that handles not only the AP approval side of it, but all document, all content in one system. So for those of you may not be aware of this, when you get your update, you're not only going to have the AP approval side, you're going to have all the AIM content as well. So you'll have a full document management, and that's not going to cost you any extra. So the add-on modules that we have now, of course, is the Capture OCR, which we'll be talking about today. But I just wanted to make you aware of a few other things that are out there that we can cover in other modules. We have something called Core Cloud Systems, which is a form building product where you can there's a bunch of templates and you can create your own forms, and there's templates like for daily reports, for expense reports, for timesheets, for requisitions, for purchase orders. So the whole idea here is to empower the field. So anything that can be done on a mobile device in the field can be pre-filled in, fully integrated with TimberScan, and also fully integrated with Sage. And that's a cloud-based solution. Another cloud-based solution that we have that works with the AP approval system is a mobile approval process, so that in the cloud, approvers can approve things on their mobile device, whether it's a phone, an Android, or an iPhone, or a tablet. We also have another product called Commander, which is a forms workflow tool. So if there are forms that need to go out and have a workflow associated with it, with Commander, you can create workflows to standard forms. So an example, if you're distributing pay stubs, what many companies do now is they print out the pay stubs, put them in envelopes, mail them out. Now, if you have 50 or 100 or 500 employees, that's a big task. With Commander, what you can do is put logic in it so it knows how to route it, and with the press of one button, it will email the pay stubs or the bills or the statements or the purchase orders or whatever document that you're sending. With one command, with one keystroke, it'll send it out to whoever requires it. Also, another product that we have as an add-on module is Acquire Automation. And Acquire Automation will automatically bring invoices into the system with some coding, very limited coding. It's kind of like a super simple capture, but capture is much, much more powerful. And one other thing that I wanted to mention that we've added as a free update, as an enhancement to the system, is something called email monitoring. So right now, how many of you have your vendors email your invoices to one of your email accounts in your companies?
Me.
I do.
We do.
Okay. And what would you say, what percentage of the invoices come in via email as opposed to those that come in the mail?
About 75%.
Great, great.
Yeah,
so
so
right now, what you typically do is somebody is going into the email and somebody is checking to see what's come into that email account, and then they drag and drop that into a folder so that they can acquire it into TimberScan. So that's the process. So now with email monitoring, you could eliminate that task. So what email monitoring will do is constantly monitor that email account, and you can have multiple email accounts, and it will grab that invoice and put it into the folder automatically. So that eliminates having to constantly go into the email account, check. Now this can be used also not only for invoices, but when you get your W-9s, you can have a W-9 email address and it will monitor the W-9 email account and put it into AIM. Same thing with insurance certificates. So it's really a cool little tool that we've added to help you guys be more efficient and more automated. Okay. So with that, I'm going to go into Capture. So what Capture is it's a tool which will take your invoices and it will optically read the invoices, and it allows you to create a template for each vendor, so that they know the invoice type, and you identify the key data entry elements so that they can be automatically extracted and put into data entry. So it's going to pull out the vendor, it's going to pull out the invoice number, the date, the amount, the commitment or the purchase order, the description, and pre-fill data entry so that when you're doing data entry, it will automatically be there. So it saves a tremendous amount of time. There is an upfront cost associated with it from a time perspective because you got to set up these templates, but they're pretty easy to set up. We actually take your 10 most common templates and set them up with you as part of the training so that you're really comfortable with setting it up. But you can set up templates very, very quickly. So as you have all your vendors' templates set up, that's going to automate significantly your data entry. So that's what it is. So with that, I'm going to escape from this PowerPoint and go into Sage, go into TimberScan rather. And here's my TimberScan menu. So when you've added AIM to your system, when you go into acquire, right now you only have acquire images. So when you add it, you have some additional functions, and this is where AIM sits. I like to start. This is where Capture sits, rather. I'd like to start with the templates because it's pretty straightforward. The acquire is exactly the same acquire as you have here, so you're all familiar with the acquire. But what's really nice is that with the email monitoring, when you click on acquire, you're going to go. It's going to take you to exactly where you need to go to pull up those invoices, and it's going to open them up, and they're going to be pre-filled, and all the invoices are going to be there that have come in through the mail. Boom, done. You know. So basically, we're going to start off with the templates. So each vendor is going to be set up with a template. I'm going to start off with Home Depot invoice here. It's a good example of what an invoice looks like. So here's my Home Depot invoice, and basically what you're doing is it's called Zonal OCR. So what you're doing is when it asks for an invoice number, you're highlighting where this vendor normally positions the invoice number. So it's just a matter of moving this to the right spot. So here's my invoice number. Here's my date. My date is coming from here. And whenever you highlight something, it shows you what you're pointing to, and it shows you how TimberScan is interpreting that. So it's 4/23/14 with dashes, but TimberScan is interpreting it with slashes, which is what Sage normally needs. Same thing with the balance due. So sometimes a balance is in a specific spot on an invoice, and that's really easy to handle. But sometimes an invoice doesn't have the balance due in a specific spot. It can be anywhere along this route. So right now we bought 3 items from there, so the total is here. But next time we may buy 6 items and the total may be here, or we may buy 10 items and the total may be here. So one of the nice things that TimberScan does is we have the ability to capture a floating total. And it's really simple. We highlight where will that total be potentially. So it could be anywhere in this area. And then we just say it's closest to the bottom. And then it shows you what it is here, and it shows you the results, and the results look good. And now I can put in a description if I want. I can put in a job if I want. I can put in a commitment if I want. And that's basically how easy it is to set up. It's just really pointing to the information that you normally extract. Now, there's a couple other fields here that I haven't covered yet. One is called anchors and one is called identifier. So, you know, when you're trying to capture a specific spot on an invoice, this spot over here, when an invoice is scanned or it comes in the mail, if you're trying to capture it from the top of the page, it may be off a little bit. So what the anchors do is it's information, just basic information that you just highlight, and instead of trying to capture that invoice number from the top of the page, it captures it from where the anchors are. So it makes it much more accurate. We don't have to worry if it's scanned a little off, or if it's a little on an angle or stuff like that, which completely messes things up. So by having anchors, it makes it very easy because it knows that it's this many pixels from the colon from invoice number. So then it becomes much more accurate. So that's what the anchors are all about. They're pretty simple. You just highlight a few areas on the form. You're done. The next thing is an identifier. And an identifier is really important because what on this invoice will identify this vendor, and something that's unique that no other invoice or no other vendor invoice will have. And it could be their phone number, it could be their fax number, it could be their email address. So I chose the phone number as the identifier. A couple other things that the system does. There are types of invoices that you get that are statements that don't have an invoice number. And Sage requires an invoice number. So if this was one of those, you can predefine an invoice number for this vendor. So it could be year, date, month with a numbering sequence, or year, month with a numbering sequence, or just a numbering sequence. So it eliminates all that stuff that you have to worry about when you get a statement without an invoice number from an attorney or something else that doesn't have a standard invoice number. Capture will take care of creating that invoice number and keeps on cycling it. So we also support multiple page invoices. So if there's multiple page invoices, we support that as well. And finally, the end of setting up these forms is what's called invoice coding. So with invoice coding, you have your identifier already there, and this is what links your vendor name to the code in Sage. So here's all my vendor codes in Sage. So I just choose the vendor that this links to. You can also eliminate some additional coding if this vendor typically works with specific cost codes. So if they're primarily acoustic tile that we're buying from the vendor, 95% of the time I'm buying acoustic tile from the vendor, I can use that cost code, and then 95% of the time it's going to be correct when I'm doing my data entry. Same thing with a category. If it's a vendor that's always a material vendor, I can have that M code automatically type in. I can also have a default description. I can also have default for equipment or GL accounts or jobs. So all of this, anything that I put in here is standard for the vendors, and it eliminates keystrokes. So the whole idea is eliminating keystrokes. So that's basically how it's set up. I'll show you the next step in this process. There's another capability in the software which is very, very cool. We can have what's called multiple profiles. So with Baldwin, they're a major supplier of ours. So when I select Baldwin, let me just size this invoice here. So when I select Baldwin, they're shipping to my site, right? So what I can do is I can use the identifier of the site here, and then when I set it up, when I set this up, I can say it's going to my site, so it actually puts the job in. So think of it this way: if you have major vendors that are shipping to the site directly, if it's on a PO, great. Then or a commitment, great. You have it there. But if they're shipping to the site directly, you can set up what's called a profile for each site, and then read the name of the site or the address of the site and have it automatically code it to the right job. So and this also works really well with utility bills. So if you've got utility bills going out and they're for different locations, you can read the account number off the utility bill and have it coded to the right location automatically. So using this capability with the identifier and having it go to specific jobs or specific GL account codes or specific properties, those are things that TimberScan does as well, that Capture does as well. So that's your multiple locations. So here I've it going to Baldwin, I got it going to Fort Wayne, I got it going Northwest Food. So that can save time. You're right about the PDF, because if there's PDF, if the invoices are coming in as pure PDF, the accuracy is tremendously greater. So you can set those up that normally come in as PDF. So from a workflow perspective, 50 invoices come in, you acquire them like you do normally, and once it acquires them, it's going to go through and check the templates, and every invoice that has a template, it's going to pre-fill data entry, so that it's going to automatically be in data entry. And then any invoices that fail will normally come up as unrecognized. So I can go into unrecognized, and the first invoice that I have here is a duplicate invoice. So it knows that this is a duplicate invoice, so I can just delete it. Because it checks for duplicate invoices. That's one of the things that it checks. The other thing that it checks for is if there isn't a template there. So for SCS, we don't have a template for SCS yet. So there's a couple things we can do. We can go ahead and create a new template. If SCS is going to be somebody that we're going to be getting invoices from periodically, or if it's one that I don't want to create a template for it, I don't get invoices from them very often, I can just click on Move to Data Entry. Now, another situation that can occur is it could not recognize a template because the vendor has changed their invoice setup. So then you can say, use an existing template. So if the vendor changes accounting systems and now they got a new invoice setup, you can say use existing template and then just tweak where the invoice number and the date and the amount now sit, and you're done, and then that'll flow in. And then there's other reasons for it failing, low confidence. So if it's really a difficult invoice to read, it's going to tell you that it's low confidence. And then you can just move it into data entry and process it. You don't really have to worry about it. So that's the basic setup of it. Any questions on what I covered so far? Okay. So now we go into data entry. So I've got 35 invoices in data entry. I can filter those, as you know right now. I can filter them by invoice type, by specific company, specific job, vendor, date, so on and so forth. I'll just go into it. So here's my first invoice. And this is from Weber Sheetrock. Because there is a PO number there, a commitment number there, it completely coded this invoice. So it's got my vendor code, it's got my invoice number. So here's my invoice number, 13516. It's got the date of the invoice, it's got the amount, all this other stuff. So I can go ahead and process this invoice. Other invoices, power equipment here. It may just have the basic information, and then you have to code it at the bottom. And it also highlights it. You see how the invoice number is in purple.